Hello and welcome. In our last video, we updated our code that toured the different display modes of the 6847, and we updated it to work with the 6847 T1, the updated VDG that appeared in late model CoCo 2s. Are you Saragana? In this video, we're going to examine the datasheet for the 6847 T1 and find out where all those bits and bytes came from that we put into the code. We'll also be comparing it with the 6847 datasheet. If you haven't seen the previous video on the 6847 datasheet, which primarily focused on what modes mean and the difference between alphanumeric internal and semigraphic 4, you might want to give that a look before this one, or not, whatever. Bonus. Let's start by comparing the pins between the old 6847 and the brand spanking new 6847 T1 on the right side. If you look at the pin diagram on the right side, you'll see there are now a couple NCs, which I think means it stands for not connected. Pin 34 and 32. What did they used to be? 34 used to be AS, which was that bit that would change you between alphanumeric and semigraphic mode. And 32 was INV, which would tell whether the next character to be printed should be inverted or non-inverted. You may recall from my last video about the 6847 VDG that there is something quite special about INV and AS. As a refresher, in the CoCo service manual, you'll see that INV is also hardwired to the incoming bit 6 from the screen buffer, and AS is hard-coded or hardwired to bit 7 of the incoming byte from the screen buffer. So the CoCo just used these on a character-by-character basis to decide whether you're in alphanumeric or semigraphic mode and to determine whether it should be inverted or non-inverted. And it looks like the T1 has really leaned into that idea, and they said, you know what? We don't even need pins for that anymore. We're just going to make use of the DDs, DD06 and DD7. We'll get to that in a sec. In fact, on page 17 of the T1 manual, and I hope you can read sideways, it says D7 is internally connected to AS. If D7 equals 1, then semigraphics mode 4 is selected. I don't think this was the case in the original 6847. I think it just so happened because of how the CoCo was connected to it. I don't know though. I'm not a hardware person. Don't trust anything I say. Page 13 gives a nice table that says what the bits for the incoming data bytes from the screen buffer stand for. And sure enough, DD7, bit 7, stands for the AS. DD6 stands for INV or LC. Lowercase? Ooh, I'm getting excited. When GM0 is 0, DD6 is its old invert self. But when GM0 is 1, DD6 now becomes a lowercase toggle. Another exciting note on page 15. The GM2 signal works as a border color enhance enable signal. When low, the alpha border colors are always black. This is what we're used to. When high, the enhanced border colors are enabled and depend on CSS and GM1. The updated mode table confirms this in the GM2 column for all the alphanumeric and semigraphic modes. It says that GM2 changes the border color only. But it's not all dandelions and unicorns. There is some bad news. In the original 6847, there are two semigraphic modes, 4 and 6, and if you recall from my previous video, the other semigraphics modes were just quirks and weren't really intentional. What's going on in the T1? The limited graphic mode is semigraphics 4. There's no semigraphics 6, there's no semigraphics anything else. It's just semigraphics 4. Did they remove a mode? In the updated chip, did it remove stuff? And what about that control over the border color that we're also very excited about? When GM2 goes from low to high, we go from black to green, or possibly orange, depending on CSS, which is great. But what's happening here? When GM1 is high, we're just stuck with black. Even when GM2 is high, we're just stuck with black. This table confirms when GM2 is high, we can get green or orange depending on CSS in alphanumeric mode 1 and 2. But check this out here. Modes 3 and 4, just black. Modes 3 and 4 arise when GM1 goes high. So you see it here, and then you see it here. And sure enough, those no 4s tell us that that affects the border color. So what's going on in those modes? In those modes, when GM1 is high, it's acting as a screen invert signal. It doesn't affect just one character, it affects all of them. So the green on blacks become black on green, the black on greens become green on blacks, and that happens simultaneously for everything on the screen. Which, by the way, is a new neat feature we didn't have on the old VDG. But when that feature is active, we then lose the feature where we get control over the border color. Let's compare the full mode tables between the 6847 on the left and the T1 on the right. On the left, you'll see we have our semigraphics 4 and our semigraphics 6. On the right, we've got our semigraphic 4, and that's the only semigraphic. But we do have these expanded options on the alphanumeric internal modes. And you can see that the AS column, the alphanumeric / semigraphic column, which referred to a pin that's been decommissioned, is now replaced with the D7 from the incoming data stream from the screen buffer. And whereas the GM0, GM1, GM2 just did not matter in the alphanumeric modes, now they do. Now they do. Different things here make different things here. And there you have it. That's where all of the bits and bytes came from the code from the last video. I hope you found this interesting. And as always, I'm not a hardware person. I probably said false statements. You're more than welcome to correct any of my mistakes in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.